Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Sands. This week, we are talking to Brett Robison, the co-founder and COO. Sorry, I almost did the wrong acronym. Of Silver Branch Brewing Company, located in, convenient to their name, Silver Springs, Maryland. Thanks for joining me again, Brett.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's always good to jump on the Uncapped podcast.
I was just thinking today, it's been over a year, or roughly around a year, since the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
When we saw each other at Love Thy Beer.
Yeah. Oh man, that was such a fun event too. I had a blast.
I love that event, and I'm so sad that it isn't taking place this year.
Yeah. I'm sad for that event, but I'm sad that we have not had any events. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel like somewhere in the next so and so many months we're going to start having events again, and that I'm unbelievably excited for.
Well, that's like I was talking to someone about how there was an article I saw recently about how entire classes of friends have been eliminated during this. And they list those people that you would just see on a regular basis because of someplace you went to, or all these different types of friends who could be good friends, but they're not someone that you just pick up a phone and call on a regular basis. So and I started thinking about it, there are so many people I've lost touch with through this, because it would be I just happen to stop at their brewery a couple times a month or so. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to do that again.
Well, I will say it's funny. Full disclosure, my therapist, actually, one of the recommendations that she gave me during this time was to work harder to reach out and network with people, because that sort of, like you're saying, that kind of natural networking thing that happened where you got to see familiar faces and talk and hang out is not really happening in the same way. So you kind of have to, at least for me, I think people that I was accustomed to seeing out and about, I have to spend a little more time to pick up the phone and go, "Hey, do you exist? I still exist."
Yeah. I think if it weren't for doing this podcast, I probably would be in a very dark place, because it's this every week being able to have an hour to 2 hour conversation with different people has definitely helped my mental state. So I can thank you for that also.
Yes, talking to other people who like beer about beer is a satisfying experience.
Yeah, because there's no hard thought to it. I just sit here. I'm usually drinking a beer while I'm doing it, and we have definitely at least one thing in common.
Yeah, that's true.
But so, speaking of Love Thy Beer, there is something that we should give a real quick plug to off the bat, because as we said, Love Thy Beer can't take place this year, and events like that are a big part of how the Brewers Association of Maryland fund all the things they do for breweries, their advocacy work, the educational programming they put on, all the different things they do. So this year, I teamed up with them, and then also ACS, Brand My Beverage, and two local artists, Brian Baltz and Eddie Grove, who are both have designed multiple Maryland beer labels. We came up with two glassware designs that will be selling. All of the proceeds, I can't get the second one to go. All of the proceeds are going to go directly to BAM. And you can pick those up at www.beerme.com/store/BAM. And I also put a link in the description of this episode. Or if you look anywhere on Uncap social media, or the Brewers Association of Maryland's social media, there's links to it too. If you buy both of them, you get a deal. They're $15 a piece, or $25 for both of them. I personally think they're beautiful. And they're printed with ACS's amazing new digital printer. So if you're looking for new glassware for Silver Branch, hit them up because that thing is amazing. I went out last week to check it out and took some video of it printing and stuff. It's ridiculous how good they look.
As you well know, we have a pretty prolific glassware obsession at Silver Branch, and I saw that ACS somewhere before even today, I saw somewhere that they entered the full color game. And I've been like salivating for the first moment that I can start ordering some full color glasses from them. So we've worked with them in the past, and I think once because and that's like a really fascinating thing. I'm just excited to have so much of like a big part of what it means when you show up to Silver Branch about like serving the right beer in the right glasses that are attractive. I think is really key. So it's funny, before COVID happened, we had designed a special glass with ACS to be at our Stout Fest. We were planning like a whole big festival around dark beer. And then ultimately, just one thing after another, it became increasingly apparent that the festival wouldn't happen in the end. But that's really cool to see. Those glasses are sweet. I'm definitely going to pick some up.
The most amazing part of them is if you've seen other full wrap glassware done at other places, there's always that seam on the back where there's a couple millimeter overlap. Their machine is so precise, it just meets up perfectly. There's no overlapping seam on the back.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy how just precise that printer is. Wish I don't have any within arm's reach. I'd show you. But you can definitely do some cool stuff.
Nice.
Someone's calling me to try to get my credit card information off of me. I get about 3 to 4 calls a day to lower the interest rate on my credit cards. So I guess now we should probably finally start talking about Silver Branch. I think it's safe to say you guys kind of built your name on classical styles. You're often at Silver Branches, I don't even know how many times has been brought up in the last year on Uncapped by different brewers as an example of like the brewery that's crushing traditional styles and stuff. But you've definitely recently delved into all of the newer popular styles. What was that shift about, or was that always planned for what you were going to do?
I think one thing that's really fascinating is when Christian and I were sort of conceiving of Silver Branch in its infancy, and we were thinking about the brand, there were like two major sort of underpinnings that were really important to us. And the first was Gemütlichkeit. So it's sort of that friendly, cozy, warm, inviting, and at sometimes kind of like playful nature. But then the other one that we didn't say as much publicly, but have always used internally for our own senses, this sense of timelessness. And it's sort of like thinking about it, like we feel like there is a time and a place for the most classically brewed Czech Pilsner, or making like what I'm probably going to have my next beer is a Baltic Porter. And then we also feel like that is only one piece of the puzzle with respect to like what beer is. And so this, sense of timelessness is something that we ascribe to, where we want to be good at making the most traditional, lager on planet Earth. And then we also want to get really good at making some of the newer styles. Like one that we just came out with was our 10%, milkshake IPA collab with Idiom. And, I think that is so many steps removed from a classic lager, but we're releasing them at the same time. Like we had a Baltic Porter and a milkshake IPA come out in the same 10-day stretch. And I think that's really fundamental to our approach to everything. I think we love beer and we love variety. And it's like, if you think there's a box that you can shove us into, we're going to fight that at every turn. We just want to, and I think it's sort of the pursuit of just like trying out different stuff.
That's it. When Mike first told me about the collaboration he was doing with you guys and then what it was, I was like, wow, that sounds off brand for Silver Branch. I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I'm going to, but you brewed it and released it at your brewery, right?
Yeah, and
he's going to do one there.
Yeah, I think that's still in the pipeline for sometime in the future. I will say that we recently did a collab with Oliver as well, where we did a sort of deserted take on our squeegee can man, and we did it as like a key lime inspired thing, sort of riffing on their superfruit can man concept. And then they did a Belgian hazy double IPA with gnomes on it from, because we've established somewhat of a following for the saisons. And so I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. And I think what's cool, what I like about, I will say in this environment, collabs are hard. They're not, it's a lot of fun when you can do them and you can have a big party. I'm all about the big parties. And so
it's a little less fulfilling.
It is. Yeah, it's not like you can't like have everybody over to your place on the night that you release it, or at least some of the people that are able to make it and like make a thing of it and drink a whole bunch of beer, which is, I think, a really satisfying part of it. So we definitely are not brewing as many collabs today as I think we'd be interested in doing in the future. And it's largely in part because we want to have that really fun, sort of rewarding moment or that kind of end cap when the beer is ready to come out. That being said, I'm really happy with the ones that we've done recently because it has allowed us to explore new things, and I think in both cases, it allowed us to explore styles that were further past where we'd gone to date in either of those categories. And doing it as a collab, we get to get insight from the other brewers who maybe have done this stuff more than we have in the past, and we get to learn from them. I'll say I got to give props to Eric, who was really in the driver's seat on Downtown Double Shake. He's our assistant head brewer, and he really drove a lot of the perspective on that beer. And I think the results are really, really awesome. Pretty happy with how that turned out.
Remind me, what size brew house do you have?
So our setup is unique. It's a 15 barrel, but it's 3 vessels. And we have 2 30 barrel fermenters, and I think, is it 7 45s? So we do a lot of double and triple batches into, single fermenter.
So you make a lot of beer.
For our footprint, it's deceptive how much beer we can make. And I think that was a big part of, Christian spent an enormous amount of time planning basically future expansion before we were even open, because we knew that we were going to be shoehorning a brewery into an otherwise kind of awkward space. So even though we opened with only 4 tanks and 4 fermenters and 1 bright, we already had a pretty good idea of where everything else would go in the future.
Yeah, because anyone unaware, Silver Branch is not located in your normal industrial park that a lot of breweries find themselves in, or old warehouse space, or typically a brewery looks for the cheapest real estate they can find. Silver Branch decided that was a stupid idea, and they went for going smack dab in the Silver Springs at the inside of office building, or a high. That's tall enough to be considered a high rise, right? It's
I forget who asked me this question recently. I don't know what it is. I guess it's like 10 or 12 stories above us, or 10 or 12 floors rather. And then the building opposite is like maybe 15 to 18. So it's a pretty huge office building.
Yeah, it's not a building you would look at and think, oh yeah, there's a production brewery in there.
Yeah, we sit on top of the brew house itself, where we had to reinforce the floor, is directly on top of like a Sandy Spring bank and a Dunkin' Donuts, and yeah, it's wild.
So I think you have more signage now. But the first time I went there, I walked past it multiple times because I think you didn't even have your grand opening yet, I believe, when I went there. Like, I walked back and forth, and this partially attributes to me just being an idiot. Like around the building, back and forth multiple times before I realized that it was actually inside that building.
Well, it's a fascinating thing from a real estate kind of land perspective, because it's basically, it's pretty much on top of the metro. I mean, you're talking about
Yeah.
from our front door to the entrance to the metro in Silver Spring, it's maybe 100 yards. But it's sort of in an awkward space, and I think that's where we benefited. And we were like, okay, it's awkward enough that it would be hard to envision us wanting to open a different kind of business, but opening a brewery right here breweries have just enough gravitational pull to make a space that might not work for like maybe a normal restaurant work really well for a brewery. And I think that's kind of what we were thinking.
When I think a lot of breweries have proven that people drive to anywhere to visit a brewery.
Yes. If there's ever a second Silver Branch location, it'll be a big concrete box with the tables outside, and people will just come drink.
And now you have that nice little cluster right in that area to help even make it more of a destination to go to than even just visiting one place.
Yeah, I'm it's so funny because I'm such a future thinker myself, and I always get hung up on what things could be, which COVID is the antithesis of that. It's like, what are you going to do right now?
Yeah. How are you going to survive for the next 5 hours?
Pretty much. I mean, that's the name of the game. But like, I'm
sorry. The rules changed. Figure it out again.
But I'm still sitting over here dreaming, and I'm like, and once they get that purple line in, and then, I'm like, I need to like keep my sights set on today, but I'm like staring 5 years into the future going like, well, that'll be cool. There'll be a lot of traffic. I wonder if, I'm thinking like, I wonder if people from College Park are going to come to Silver Spring as a going out destination. Because if you look at the kind of the map for like, what the purple line is supposed to be, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and there's enough in that downtown area that it could draw people.
I think so.
You have that theater, there are plenty of restaurants, breweries.
Fillmore, yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Fillmore. But there's I can't remember what's the name of the place, the one theater there. It doesn't matter. But let's take a real quick sponsor break, and then we get back. I want to talk about Delusional Optimist 2 a little bit, because this is a great beer. But we will be right back.
If you haven't heard about our beer dinners, well, now you have. Typically, the last Tuesday of each month, we partner with a local brewery and craft an exclusive 5-course dinner. Each course is thoughtfully paired with some of the finest craft beer available. You'll meet the brewery, enjoy memorable pairings and service, and have a damn good time. Like us on Facebook to stay in the know when tickets become available, because they will sell out quick.
Idiom Brewing Company proudly offers a delicious variety of beers to satisfy the most discerning tastes. Best known for their wide array of IPAs, delicious fruited sours, and robust porters and stouts, Idiom prides themselves on continuing to innovate, utilizing new and experimental hops. local ingredients, and unique flavor profiles. Idiom has a simple goal in mind: to bring people from all walks of life together to enjoy themselves and each other. Idiom Brewing Company is located in downtown Frederick, just south of the intersection of East Street and East Patrick Street, with ample seating and directly on Carroll Creek.
Speaking of non-traditional styles, although I guess at this point, can you really consider a hazy IPA non-traditional? Like it's so ubiquitous that like it's not like it's some rare style anymore, and it's been around long enough that it's not new.
I think the canon has officially accepted all takes and variants on hazy IPA as a thing for real.
But so first, this beer is phenomenal. Tastes great.
Thank you.
But the can is really cool. I didn't look at it closely until just a little bit ago to notice all the things floating around the person's head. We have the coronavirus, a dollar sign with a question mark, the hand sanitizer. Guessing that's a delivery truck.
Yep.
Stock market crashing. So masks. So I'm guessing that you're optimistic that this will go away and life will return.
So the whole concept, in order to understand Delusional Optimist 2, you got to go back to the original Delusional Optimist. And it's become a bit of a it's become a bit of an inside joke where I'm sometimes overly optimistic with respect to how long things take or how much manpower. So I might look at 2 pallets of beer and be like, oh yeah, we can move that real quick. And people are like, no, that's going to take a little more work, or it's going to take a little longer than you expected. But I think it also just speaks to, this kind of, I don't know. I think there's just this, it's like no matter what challenges kind of come your way or whatever happens, you forge ahead and you just keep looking ahead to the next thing and keep moving forward. And that's kind of where the original concept for Delusional Optimist came from. And then,
so what's on that label? I can't tell because people aren't very bright, so it's hard to find a picture of it because everyone's checking into Delusional Optimist with Delusional Optimist 2. Wait, there we go. I found it. So it's like newspapers.
It's less coronavirus related or less COVID related, but it's still a lot of the important things to me in my life. So my dogs are featured on that label. My fiance is on both of them. And it's kind of like,
I was wondering if you can't really tell on 2 because there's the mask. But I just found the one for the first one, and it looks, it's enough of a similarity that I was wondering if that was her.
And I think really it's partially because I'm definitely a chaotic operator, in that the number of conversations going at the same time and the things rolling around in my head and trying to it's sort of like whenever we build something cool or whenever we have a fun event or whenever, I'm already thinking about the next one, and I think when you're in that mode, there's a lot just sort of swirling around your head 24/7. So that was part of it too. It was kind of like a joke internally, of just the amount of things that I'm trying to process at the same time. So
who's doing the label artwork?
His name is Chris Bonnell. He's a good friend of the brewery. He's friends with a lot of us there. And he's a killer artist.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, he's I think what's been cool for me to see is it's been a very sort of progressive approach, and I think that's something that we embrace a lot of at Silver Branch, is just this sort of progressive nature of everything in terms of, moving it forward and improving as you move it forward. And he's always been a great artist, and now he's really gotten into the details of learning how to play with foils and highlights and make everything pop. And I think it's really starting to show in a lot of our artwork, in terms of just even how it looks from like a distance on the shelf.
I'm looking forward to trying Lord Squeegee. That one
I said that
really
just
good.
for you.
Yeah.
I knew that would be in your wheelhouse. That I wanted to make sure you got that one. That's your cup of beer.
Definitely is. And what would the other one? It was Eternal Optimus. Is that I almost grabbed that to drink, and then I noticed the triple listed on it. I was like, I don't think I want to drink a triple IPA at 3 p.m. when I have a bunch of stuff to do the rest of the day. So we're gonna save that to drink at a later in the day. But that also is a really cool label.
Thank you. Yeah, the primary featured figure in that one is our marketing manager, Erin Young. And if you ever have the pleasure of meeting her in the future when we start having events and stuff again, she is basically a ray of sunshine and just super fun to be around, and really, really awesome. And so hers has a lot more, sunshine and rainbows, and so it's a really good beer. I'm happy with that one too.
I also loved the High Time cans. Did you get to the bottom of the $32 4-pack?
We did. I'm thankful that Brendan from True Respite texted me at like 8:30 that night and was like, "Hey, dude, you might want to get on Maryland Beer Drinkers and check this out." And we were able to sort through it. And I thankfully, I don't think there were any bad actors in this. I think it was just an honest mistake, and everybody was happy in the end, because I definitely, we want people to love our beer, and we want to charge what's a fair price. But we would never want to go, way over. And the store that was mentioned, they're a great store. Honestly, we love working with them. So then that's why in my responses, I was like, let's look into this, because this doesn't seem right. They don't, all of our other beers that we've ever sold there, they've priced right. And so I think it was just an honest mistake in the end.
One thing I love about so many brewery owners being in the Maryland Beer Drinkers group is that it's often kind of like a master's class on how customer service is done. There are so many of you all that, like, someone will post something that probably a lot of times an owner just wants to reply with to go F yourself. But then always handle it with such grace and just an example of amazing customer service. It's kind of a nice thing to see all the time.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's definitely baked into our entire ethos at Silver Branch. I think is Gemütlichkeit is, absolutely comes with hospitality and service, and just, I don't know, just being friendly to people in the end. I mean, I think I always look at, like, when there's an issue or an instance where something comes up like that, there's more to the story than whatever's being seen at first pass, and you just have to be patient enough to figure out what's going on, and then help navigate, and not build up too many assumptions in the process, and just go, okay, recognize something's amiss, but we're going to work through it and figure out and go from there.
You have a big mixture of 16-ounce cans and 12-ounce cans. How do you decide what's going into which size can?
Well, that's a big question. Because there's a lot. Right now, we don't have to force much of that decision because we are pretty much only able to get a hair more than our necessary amount to fulfill our flagships with the 12 ounce. So immediately, like during this time, there's really not much in the way of options. It's kind of like if it's anything other than a flagship, it's pretty much got to be 16 ounce. That being said, we definitely have some brands that are slated for this year that are probably going to be 12 ounce that are not flagship brands. I used to think there was a set of rules for how we did this. Like we were like, oh, more traditional would be 12 ounce versus certain other beers would be 16 ounce. But we actually find that some beers we would prefer to have in 16 ounce. So like this week we're releasing Vespucci Connection Volume Number 2, which is our sort of dry hopped Pilsner, or some people refer to them as like an Italian Pilsner. And when you really open that beer up, you don't want to just drink 12 ounces. It's like highly drinkable. It's, 5%. And it's like that artwork is the most intricate label that I think we've ever done, but it's also one of my favorite ones to look at. And so I think, a 16 ounce can definitely offers a bigger canvas for whatever it is that you want to say. Yeah. So there's a rhyme and a reason, but right now there's not, because it's like, okay, if it's not a flagship, it's probably going into a 16 ounce can with rare exception.
Just due to size.
Just due to like canning shortage problems, really.
I mean, not size, availability is what I'm.
Yeah. So I think it's like, and the thing is we're very fortunate to have grown a pretty considerable amount in our wholesale operation this year, and so a lot more of what we spend our time doing, like our head brewer Chris spends a lot of time working on the schedule and making sure that we have the things when we need them at the time we need them. And it's been hard to plan and predict a lot this year. It's there's just been a lot of uncertainty around when and how to get cans,
which is in the worst timing ever, considering that especially Montgomery County, so 100% of your sales at times have to be in cans.
Yeah.
Let's take another real quick sponsor break, and when we get back, there's a couple other beers. I just want the story behind the name and the artwork, because a lot of your beers just have really cool artwork and cool names. So we will be right back. There are many reasons why I have chosen District East for where I purchase beer. I love the flexibility of being able to make a custom 6-pack or take home a crowler from one of the 8 beers on tap. Their friendly and knowledgeable staff do an amazing job at keeping a diverse selection on hand. You can even purchase artwork from the monthly featured artist. District East is located on Northeast Street in Frederick, in the same shopping center as Family Mill and Rockwell Brewery. You can find today's beer lists on the District East Facebook page or at www.districteast.beer. To all you craft breweries, wineries, and distilleries out there, listen up. Atlantic Custom Solutions is the real deal in providing you branded growlers, ceramics, glassware, and accessories like koozies, coasters, and keychains. Their high-definition digital printing, organic ink, and low-fire process ensures your brand is printed in ultra-high definition, giving you a one-up on the competition. We've used Atlantic Custom Solutions for uncapped branded glassware and couldn't be happier with it. Check them out. Visit www.brandmybeverage.com or give them a call at 434-286-4500 to learn more about how they can help you brand your business. Uncapped is brought to you with support from McClintock Distilling, Maryland's first and only organic certified distillery. They are well known for their award-winning gin and are rapidly growing a name for themselves for their Matchstick Bourbon and Bootjack Rye Whiskey that have both won double gold at international spirits competitions. You can visit them in historic downtown Frederick along Carroll Creek for tours and tastings. Go to McClintockDistilling.com for more information. Unicycle Vigilante. Super cool looking label. What's the meaning behind that? Who at the brewery rides a unicycle?
So there's a regular of ours that is a regular both at Silver Branch and in Astrolab, and his name is Dave, and he is a motorized unicycle enthusiast. Forgive me, Dave, if I'm not naming this contraption properly, but yeah, he's just like literally like one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And there was this story where I guess somebody it actually happened at Astrolab, but somebody had tried to steal a wallet from one of the owners at Astrolab, and he pretty much chased him down and got the wallet back on his unicycle. And so he's sort of in the local Silver Spring lore. He's turned himself into a hero, and he would never seek that kind of acknowledgement, which is exactly why we did it. Because he just was like, another day on the unicycle, and and we were like, he's just been one of those people that really, just being around him makes you feel happier. So we wanted to send him some love and acknowledge that for sure.
So that is him on the can
as a superhero version of himself.
That's awesome. That's a much better story than what I had in my head. I mean, I don't know what I had in my head, but like, that's just an amazing story. He is a true unicycle vigilante.
Hey, the name fits. The name fits.
How has that story's never been posted, right? Or was
I forget it's on the side of the can, but I forget.
Okay. It is. Here it is on Facebook. Yeah, it lists the wallet story, and there's a lot of words, which often when I'm scrolling, I don't like words, and I like the pictures.
That's all right. We're gonna start putting QR codes on our cans, so then you can go to videos to just.
Are you really doing that? Because that would be amazing.
Yeah, we're doing that with we're gonna do that with our Nitro Chronicle, and we're gonna do that with Quantum Shift, and then depending on how that goes, we'll continue to explore that as a marketing avenue. So basically, like in the next couple weeks, depending on when we get the labels in and the timing of when the beer is set to release, our flagship Chronicle, we basically have officially retired, and then it will be reborn as Nitro Chronicle. And I think we're set to release that in about like 4 to 6 weeks. And so you'll get the can, it'll be a 12-ounce can, but there'll be a QR code. And if you click the QR code, it'll take you to the website, and you'll get to check out a video of us talking about it, pouring it, showing people how hard to shake it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
There's a brewery up in Pittsburgh called Grist House that has QR codes on all of their cans, but it just takes you to the webpage for that beer that gives you tasting notes and all the information about it. So it's really cool adding in that video aspect, taking you to it, especially for lazy people like me who don't want to read.
Well, and we were kind of thinking about, we were like, okay, we don't want to like, we want somebody to arrive at a piece of information that we term it like sort of like rich content, where it's like immersive. So there will be text and there'll be imagery on the page, but the first thing that you're going to get hit with is this video of us describing exactly what it is. So I'm pretty excited. I mean, as an aside, I'm a big believer in QR codes finally having their moment in a way that they definitely had some struggles to get over, but
I think early on people tried too hard to make them happen when it didn't make sense. And I think now, like, it's going to be a struggle to get them adopted because so many people wrote them off, myself included, because the way they were being used, the having to have a special app and everything made them useless. Like 5 years ago is probably when like there was the big push to try to make them a thing. And all I kept thinking was like, stop trying to make this a thing. They're stupid. Just give me the URL. I'll type it in. Because most places were just like 5-6 years ago, a QR code on a Silver Branch can would literally just have taken you to silverbranch.com. But now, like with, I don't know how Android phones are, but at least with an iPhone, all you have to do is open the camera app and it recognizes QR codes and takes you to wherever it's going to go to. So the full ecosystem is there for it to actually work. So it makes sense to use them now, especially taking you to stuff like that.
So
that's
awesome. I think the two things that changed the game for QR codes that have made them applicable for a wider set of marketing purposes now were the combination of the fact that the technology supports you just hover over it with your camera open and it serves you the link, no special app. That's a big piece. I think the other big piece is I will be so curious to see how restaurants, breweries, and other businesses handle menus moving forward.
So many places now, that's how it is. I've been to like Hysteria. That's how they have their beer menus now. It's taped to the corner of each. I think you can even order through it. It's taped to the corner of each table, and you scan that, and it brings up their menu. There's a couple other restaurants I know that are doing that too.
And I think what's interesting from my perspective is like, okay, it's convenient for the operator. Like if you want to change a menu item digitally, you just change it and it's set. You don't have to print 50 more menus.
And if you're out of it, you just cross it off now and not having to, I would like this special. Sorry, we don't have any left.
Right. But I think for the end user, it's like if it were only serving the operator, then I'm not sure that it would be worth it. But for the customer, like they're getting served, I think, a richer, more immersive menu experience. Because now, if you click the QR code on the table at Silver Branch and you go to look at beers, you're going to see labels and the description of the beer. You know, and it's a lot easier to let a beer nerd get not one sentence's worth. I can put the full paragraph of the story behind the beer and they're able to go through it, in a way that you just can't accomplish with a physical menu. So I'll be curious to see where this goes. We haven't decided internally what our long-term plan is, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of definitely breweries and a handful of restaurants say, maybe we don't need menus.
I really wish I knew how to code mobile apps, because today, for some reason, like I just had in my head the thought process of how to make a Untapped that doesn't suck, and adding this type of functionality in would be perfect. Like where if the QR code opened this fictional app and it just let you, like the brewery enters all that information in, like actually brings up the prices and the menu and everything. You can just order it through the app and it goes back into your point of sale system. But alas, I'm not smart enough to do that.
I think what's cool about, we've had so much, we've embraced so much technology, but the counter to that is then you have to manage all of it and you have to figure out how to make it all fit together.
Yeah, and so fix it when it inevitably breaks. And
so it's a different kind of but it's kind of the same thing, managing a brew house or managing a restaurant or managing, you have stuff and it breaks. Now it's just also true of technology. It's just so I think that's a big part of what we end up.
Your life before Silver Branch, it was hospitality and the restaurant industry, right?
Yes, and my life before that was algorithmic equities and options trading. So I actually
Oh,
have a
that's
tech background, as it was applied to finance.
Did you buy GameStop?
No, actually, we don't have enough bandwidth in this conversation for me to go into it. But I'm I'm a big advocate and believer in small business for a variety of reasons. One of which is, in the case of Silver Branch, I have the ability to impact my own outcome even in the middle of a pandemic, and also it's there's a lot there. It's different people are working off of different sets of information, and maybe that's where I'll leave it. Because this is a rabbit hole.
I never I didn't act on anything because historically I've made poor decisions repeatedly when it had to do with when to invest and when not to invest. Usually when not to invest. But I just found the whole story was just absolutely fascinating, and it still continues to evolve and be fascinating.
Yeah, as a former finance person, it is absolutely fascinating to watch. But I love sitting on the sidelines and seeing what comes out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to be involved in that particular game,
And I find like Elon Musk's involvement makes it even further interesting because that man seems to be like the one person in the world that has the ability to completely affect the market just by tweeting something.
Yes.
Like more so than even world leaders can.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably, it's not that hard to understand why. I mean, his own personal success.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think he's probably like at least in the Reddit sphere, kind of almost looked at as one of them. Like he kind of he has that personality. He's like he's almost one of the guys.
Well, of course, there's always some envy amongst fellow geeks for the geek that made it, right?
Yeah.
There's envy and support at the same time. So I do think he's well liked amongst.
I don't even remember how we got down this rabbit hole that I took us into.
I don't either. Take us down another rabbit hole, a beer rabbit hole this time.
So the last time I talked to you, a lot of your focus with the company was the tap room.
Mm.
How on a personal level, how has the last year changed your focus?
So for me personally, I think I always held, even before we opened Silver Branch, this belief that I would take on whatever role was most important in that moment in time and forever work to pass those responsibilities and find the next role to take on. And I think having had that mindset before all of this has really helped us as a company. And I think it's safe to say, my business partner, Christian, takes a very similar approach where, we go where it makes the most sense to do whatever is necessary. And so we had some great people in the tap room, like our general manager, Melinda, and our assistant tap room manager, Sophie. Like they're both excellent at what they do. Honestly, it's at the point where everybody will be happier and people will get their beer quicker if they're managing more so than if I was. I would just gum up the system at this point and ask dumb questions. But yeah, I mean, I think when this all started happening, there were sort of two split tracks, and it was wholesale operations and then e-commerce. And, our sales manager, Courtney, has done a great job by herself. And then we also embrace working with Craft Coalition all over this state of Maryland, including Montgomery County. And her combined with them has really not only grown it, but they're pretty much running that side of the business with just a little bit of insight from me. And so lately, it feels like a lot of what I've been focused on is like the website and e-commerce and sort of the logistics of
Coming up
operation.
with cool ideas for QR codes.
Yes. I come up with the QR codes. Christian creates the creative content, and now we have a team of brewers to come up with recipes and stuff. But I think about, ways to either get beer to people or get people to pay attention to us, or figuring out, how to sort of connect those dots. And so it's been an interesting year. I mean, I've definitely, for me personally, I've activated a side of my brain or a part of my life that was laying pretty dormant, because when you're managing a restaurant, you're not implementing a lot of technology, but not, at least pre-COVID, it was not something that required too much sort of technological insight. Whereas now, with all the direct to consumer and kind of everything else that's going on, I mean, I basically, I was in a text thread the other day joking that I'm going to change my title from COO to CTO, because I feel like I'm managing technology 24/7 right now.
How long were you guys open pre-COVID?
Like literally 1 year. Like we had our anniversary, and the following week is when the shutdowns began.
So during that time, I imagine there were a lot of people that went through the tap room. I would assume, like, especially during rush hour, people dropping in.
Oh, yeah.
So with the shift that you're so widely distributed, I mean, it's pretty much anywhere in Maryland you can find your beer at this point. Will that be a problem when you're able to open back up? And because I would imagine pre-COVID, you sold a lot of beer through your tap room. So is that going to make it where your beer is harder to get through the rest of the state, or do you have free capacity now where you would just be able to brew more to keep up with distributing and fill back in with tap room, or will you have to kind of pull back on the distribution side?
You're asking the big questions now.
It's something that I've thought a lot about, because there's a lot of breweries that you could not get outside of the brewery, but are pretty readily available now on shelves. So like that's a big wonder in my mind, that like when tap rooms reopen, what's it going to be like when you go to the store to buy beer?
I don't know. I cannot speak for anybody else.
Yeah,
I know that thankfully for us, we had designed our brewery to have a theoretical limit of about 7,000 barrels. Now, in reality, it might be closer to somewhere between 5 and 6, and that's yet to be seen for us. Pre-COVID, our first 12 months of operation, I think we made just over 2,000. If the trends continue, we basically doubled. So we're making about 4,000 on an annual basis. I think that as we continue to grow in wholesale and the tap room comes back online and draft becomes a thing again, I definitely feel like we're going to bump up against terminal capacity, which is like the full extent of what we can produce, sometime in the next 12 to 18 months. And what we do then will be, an interesting thing to look at from a variety of angles. But, we're not inclined to want to shift away or give up lines of business that we've established now. And also, I've watched enough. I'm a big sort of student of history and kind of studying what others have done before. And, we are already trying to take into account these types of things into our forecasting so that we don't have a situation where our demand outstrips our supply by a significant amount. But it is, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think given how much we've grown and how much we continue to plan to grow, thankfully we built out enough space and we have enough tank space to go as far as we can with this current location. So we'll just have to see what happens when we get there. I think what I'm excited about is we've managed to sort of make money in other ways, and that has kept our business rolling forward. I feel like when the tap room comes back online and we can start doing events, then I really feel like we're in a position to grow a lot. So I think the next 6 to 9 months are going to be really indicative of what's possible for Silver Branch in the future. So I just need to wait, and I'm a big believer in numbers, and not just me, but as a company, we focus on this a lot with our entire management team. So I think in 6 to 9 months, we'll have a much better sense of how and which way we're going to approach these kinds of problems.
Because I would imagine like another thing it plays into it too is what is going to happen at the stores. Is that going to shrink back as people can go back to the breweries? Or, I mean, I know there's still a lot of thought that fear has been so ingrained in people's thoughts that there are still going to be a lot of people who aren't going to be comfortable with going and sitting in a restaurant, a bar, or a brewery for quite some time. So they'll still be buying cans to go. And
yeah, and I think I'm expecting that, like in our online business, for example, I expect there's going to be potentially, 50, even 60% shrink from where we are right now to where we go to when more people are going out, more people are having experiences with beer in person. But I don't believe it's going to go away. And I think it's similar for retailers. I think maybe their sales, because they had across the board, retail had a banner year last year. So I think you'll see a drop off, but I don't think it will be so significant. I think in some ways, I think breweries as a whole, regardless of where they fit into distribution models, tap rooms, whatever, I think the tap rooms have an even better chance to become even more of a significant pillar in their community. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen for us in the spring and summer is the number of new faces that I saw during, the fall last year, like people that I have never seen before, was so much higher to any other time. And I think, breweries are not any longer, or I'd like to think they're not any longer just places for people who really geek out about beer, but they're actually increasingly just awesome community gathering spots, and I think that for breweries is only going to go up. But I still think a lot of people are going to buy beer at their local store. I think people are still going to, if they got accustomed to ordering online, I think they're still going to do that. I think it's going to be, everybody's going to mix it up. I think there's going to be a lot of, I think when it comes to like identifying consumers, we like to create neat little boxes, but I think consumers are much trickier than that. And I think beer drinkers are much trickier than that. I think it's safe to assume that the same person who might come to Silver Branch and have a beer one weekend might say, hey, I'm going to have a barbecue the next, and order online or go to the retailer and pick up a 6-pack there. And, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's some mix of everything. And I think the name of the game for us and everybody else is just sort of being there. having as many ways as possible for people to reach you, to reach your brewery, and get to have your beer.
It in the past year, the big guys took a really big hit in sales, right? If I remember correctly, like several large brands were down year over year this past year.
Which scale of large are we talking about? Are we talking about the mega large, like
Yeah, like
Budweiser's?
Anheuser-Busch, Coors. Like,
I think that had, and again, I'm not a professional in this. So this is just me regurgitating what I've seen. I think some of that has to do with
tap sales,
like draft sales, and also seltzer. I think seltzer in grocery stores are a big factor for the really big breweries in a way that they are, but are not for smaller breweries. And I think the rise of seltzer, I saw something like last year, it was like, more than double-digit growth. And I think that eats into a similar market share as like some of your like big mass-produced brands.
I was just thinking, like, because so many craft breweries sold more beer than ever last year. So it's either everyone is drinking way more than usual, which I mean, I think there is some truth to that, or someone's losing. And I haven't talked to a single craft brewer that sold less beer in 2020 as they did 2019. So like I was thinking, like, it had to have been like just the big guys are who lost.
Chris, you talk to the best craft brewers. That's why.
Well, yeah, that's true. I haven't talked to any of the ones that are struggling, and so maybe I have a skewed perspective of how people are doing.
I don't know.
Someone listening to me right now, like, just cursing me with the struggles that they're going through right now.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure what could be causing that. I think, beer as a segment, craft or not craft, has relative to other alcohol, it's been pretty flat for many years now. But thankfully, I still see for us, as a craft brewery, tons of growth potential within that space. So.
Well, there's so many ways now to make a beverage that a beer drinker doesn't like. And you have your fruited sours that aren't beer. So you're like the average person that doesn't like beer could potentially like a fruited sour. Have you guys started making seltzers at all, or you're not interested in that?
No, I mean, I think, we've definitely talked about it internally, and we've definitely explored that possibility. We've talked about cocktails, but, I think our focus has and always will be beer. And as long as we're barely keeping up with our own demand, and, even from a forecasted perspective, it's hard to justify doing something like that.
Yeah.
When, and I think, and that is the question for us over time is, when we get to a certain size, like, cause we're all over the state of Maryland, but we're still 100% self-distributed. So we don't have a distributor anywhere. So the two major areas where you won't see us are the most, sort of northwestern tip that's effectively in West Virginia. And then like the Eastern Shore, you probably won't see Silver Branch because logistically it's hard for us to, figure out a way to get trucks to go there. But I don't know.
Maybe a convenient place to drive to.
No, you're it's weird going to the Eastern Shore. As much as I want to have our beer there, once you're there, you're kind of landlocked. And so, I think we've had such success in our home market and places like Baltimore and Frederick and Howard County, and working with the Craft Coalition, that, I'm not convinced that we won't be able to fulfill all of our demand just between the areas that we do go in, Maryland and DC. And I think that's not a bad place to be for a little while.
So you've mentioned growth and expanding and a couple times. Do you have a size in your head that you want Silver Branch to grow to, or is your goal to just keep growing and growing and growing?
My goal is to grow as much as I can convince everybody else to go with me. So I don't know, it's hard to say. I think I've it's been really stressful, but I've had a blast coming up with all these new lines of business, if I'm being honest. And yeah, I don't think we're in a position where we're going to reach a point anytime soon where we say, okay, enough is enough. Let's just hang out here. I think, growth can be seen from two different perspectives as well. Because there's something to be said about actual growth, and then there's something to be said about getting to a point and then being able to look inward and make everything a little bit better and make everything, like work on procedures and processes to make everything sort of run smoother and get one step closer to making what we hope is seen as world-class beer in the end, right? And if you set your goal far enough out, then you going along that path, you have a better chance of reaching it or getting close to it. So I don't know. I don't think there's any end in sight for us. I think it's just the ways in which we choose to do it will be the thing that we figure out near term.
Who is the guy on the Eternal Optimist can?
So the Eternal Optimist can is Erin. That's our marketing manager.
Well, no, there's a guy up in the cloud.
Oh, that's her fiance.
Okay.
Or no, sorry, husband. Her husband Ryan. So he's actually a good friend of mine, and I married them at Silver Branch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you a minister in the Universal
I
Life
am.
Church?
Yeah, I am. So. I am a minister. That is true.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. That growth and I think it's something I've talked to a couple places recently, and some people have said there's a point where they know they can reach that's kind of where they want to stay, that they don't want to get any bigger than that point, because they'll reach at that level, they can live comfortable lives, and growing larger would pose problems. So that's where that question was coming from.
Yeah, I think COVID demonstrated to me how uncomfortable I get when things feel even remotely stagnant or stayed. So I have probably the opposite problem where
you just want to keep going.
I'm good at building new stuff. I'm okay at maintaining existing stuff. There's other people who are much better at it than I am. So yeah, I don't know where we go with this. I will say this. I am so freaking excited on so many levels to be able to do what I felt we did so well that has just not even been a part of our business for the last year, which is to throw killer events of all kinds. Some of them are cultural and tied to the roots of some of these more classical styles of beer. Some of them are more food centric. And, I think one event that we didn't get to do last year that I'm hopeful there's enough capability given the current circumstances. I really, really want to have a giant barbecue festival and with a route beer. But we feel the best time of year to do that would be August.
Yeah.
And this year we're hopeful cautiously that we could do something like that, but we're not sure. we'll just have to wait and see what comes out.
Yeah, like planning that far out is so impossible to.
Well, right now it is. That's for sure.
There is that glimmer of hope that at that point, like, enough people will be vaccinated. Hopefully, enough has been done that can kind of ease back into having that type of thing. But there's still, like, just, if anything we've learned for sure is that uncertainty is a certain.
Yeah. I think, it's funny though. I feel like that's always true. I feel like there's random punctuated moments in life where it's seemingly more obvious to us. But I feel like uncertainty is sort of ever present. And part of it is just how we choose to handle it, and I think I think that's what I love so much about, as much as there's stuff that hasn't been great. I love so much about how the last 12 months went for us, because in the midst of all of the uncertainty, I think we had one move, and it was hit the gas pedal harder, like there
Lean
wasn't literally, it was just like, well, the world's on fire. So, okay, now that we know that it's on fire, like, forge ahead, keep going,
So back to the videos and QR codes you mentioned. So will you do like tasting note types of things and pairing recommendations and like that type of information given for the beer?
I think for the Nitro Chronicle, there's definitely a tactical element. It's funny because we did an R&D run, and we did a limited run into 16-ounce cans, and it was mostly so that we could have it be separate from our existing flagship, and also give ourselves a chance to learn, sort of the brewing technology associated with packaging nitro, making sure we're not making exploding cans, making sure
always
that
a good goal.
Yes, making sure. Well, and also making sure that we like the character of the beer, because there's a perception before you go into it that, hey, this beer could potentially work well on nitro. But you could also end up with a product that, for one reason or another, doesn't. And I think, so we did that. And what we learned was that a lot of the nitro products that are out there say in kind of smaller letters, or like a description of instructions, and it's like harder to see. And so ours is like black and red. And on the side of the can, it's like, shake hard, step 1, pour, step 2 is pour hard, step 3 is experience completely cut, and it's huge. Like, you cannot miss it. We're like, and we don't want people to, it's not like gently rotate this. We want people to like, no, like, hey, grab this can, give it a good hard
everything
couple
you've
shakes.
ever been taught not to do.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and this is part of the reason that we're going to this, but I had Nitro Chronicle sitting in my fridge at home, and I was so happy with how that beer turned out. Just being that beer on nitro just works. And then we also had coffee. I had Coffee Chronicle in my fridge, and I had I'd been drinking Nitro Chronicle pretty much like every night for a couple nights in a row. And then I went to go grab a coffee, and I was sitting on my couch, and I shook it real hard, and I like looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, that would have been so bad.
Because if I remember correct, you're a cicerone, right?
Yes.
Which that's the second level, right? Oh, 3. Wow, you're the
I don't know if this is true anymore, but at least at the time, there was me and one other dude who his name is Mike Reinitz. He works at Premium in DC, but I think he works for actually the national group, and got into the Cicerone program a while ago.
I think that's accurate, because the last time I looked, there aren't many like what's the second level
Certified.
There aren't many certified in Maryland either. So anytime I want to do any kind of content where I need a cicerone, you can be my go-to.
Yes, assuming that I'm not trying to fill the role of COO and CTO at the same time.
Yeah, as if you have all kinds of free time to just drop things for a whim of a stupid video that I would want to make.
Hey, look, I'm happy we're getting to talk. I'm getting to open beer at 3:30, and I can't be interrupted.
That's the whole reason I do this. Like, it's the perfect excuse. Like, well, before when they were in person, I always shot to do them at lunchtime. So gave me an excuse to drink a beer at lunch. So what are you drinking?
Right now, I'm drinking, I gotta go the Train to Midnight, which is our Baltic Border.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, I think what's fascinating is I personally love lager, and have always loved lagers, and I think the eminent drinkability that comes with a lager is just it suits me so unbelievably well, and I've had a blast with making everything that we make, but a lot of these classic and I think what's interesting too is I think if I'm gonna go on a bit of a a tangent here, but I think there's a tendency to think of traditional beers and then think, oh, it's traditional, so then the branding should look traditional and the branding should be traditional. And I think we fundamentally disagree with that, because the branding should be cool and it should be super fun. And maybe we're fortunate that somebody sees like a label like this and a name like this that's like pretty cool, and it's like purplish and black and green, and they're like, whoa, what is that? Baltic Porter. And then they give it a shot. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we have had success with some of our more traditional styles, is because we treat them as equals to hazy IPA or as equals to adjunct stouts. We do it all, and in our mind, they're all equally cool, just for different, reasons and different preferences. But something like this, like a dark lager, I love these beers. We did our Tmave Special Obsidian Castle back in the late fall, early winter. We're doing this. We've been so happy with how our dark lagers have been turning out. Christian floated the idea of doing like a Schwartz beer the other day, which I think would be a super fun one. So yeah, I like having the variety, that's for sure.
Do you have a favorite style?
I really love Pilsner, and actually Saison. So I think like the two beers that we have, well, one is a family of beers, all the gnome beers. I'm so happy that we've gone that direction, and we were very fortunate to win an award this year at GABF. We got a gold for the Beyond the Gnome World Saison.
I forgot about that. Congratulations! I do remember seeing that now.
Yeah,
that's not a small feat. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, on a big congrats to the entire brewing team. But and I think that's a lot of people say, oh, if you're going to make Saison, that's commercial suicide, right? Like from a sales perspective. But I don't know. That's not true at Silver Branch. Like we've managed to, people like the gnomes, and I think that's a big part of it too. Is like the gnomes are really compelling from a branding perspective, so they get people to say, hey, maybe I do want to try this beer. So I don't know. I think Saisons have been always a favorite of mine, and Pilsners like Vespucci Connection, both the first one and the one that we're getting ready to release, are stylistically so different than our flagship Pilsner, which is Glass Castle, because that's a much sort of like richer, fuller bodied, Czech Pilsner, and Vespucci is much more sort of light and dry hopped. And I don't know. I've been really, at the end of the day, like for me, those are going to be my favorite beers because I can drink the most of them, and I love
Yeah.
drinking beer. Like that's it. So
Yeah.
like, it's like I love tasting other stuff too. Don't get me wrong, like, but I can only
Like if
have
you just
so
want to
much.
sit down and have several beers while watching a game or just sitting around talking with friends, a Pilsner is one you want to grab because you're not going to be downing a 6-pack of fruited sours or hazy IPAs unless you want to consume a week's worth of calories. And your stomach's also going to be very upset with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
but
the
a-
one thing with the sours is you can definitely get the kind of the heartburn going after a while.
But a well-made Pilsner just goes down easy, and there's next to no ill effects.
Yeah. I mean, that's where my and I think what's interesting about that is I think it can be perceived as like, oh, well, that's I don't want to say boring, but like, oh, that's not that exciting. But I sort of see it. I see it as like finding that sort of like that spectacular character of an amazing Pilsner that is so nuanced. It's almost like you can't even exactly describe what makes it so good, but it's that ultimately satisfying feeling that you have afterwards where you're like, it's just like amazing pasta, right? It's just like pasta, so simple.
Yeah.
But if you like, if and I'm just talking about the pasta itself, not even the sauce that you put with it. But if you get a good like, handmade pasta, you're like, wow, like the texture. It's like getting down to these like levels of granularity of like very tiny differences are making it.
But I like how you put that, like where it is very hard to verbalize and quantify why it's better or why it tastes so good. And like, at least for me, it would always just like, I don't know, it tastes really good. It's better.
And I think, and that's the funny thing is, all this studying and learning how to talk about these things, still at the end of the day, there's the sip quality and like what you perceive in a beer as a sip. And then there's like, 3/4 of a glass quality. And that's the one that nobody ever judges officially. But socially and in conversation with people, it's how do you feel at the end of like half or 3/4 of a full glass? And I think that's why I like lagers so much.
So a lot of your cans have people on them or people's faces. How do I get my face onto a Silver Branch can, since that is what I'm known for getting people to do?
That's your thing.
Yeah.
I'll you know what? I'll send it up the poll to the higher ups. Oh wait. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we're in the throes of summer and we're at like peak sour season. Maybe we can work out a Squeegee Can Man cameo or something.
I would be down for that.
Yeah, I'll flag the team and let them know that you've officially put in your request.
Hey, there's some idiot up in Frederick that that tried to convince breweries to put his face on cans, and he's nagging me now. So,
and now he's saying that we have to make a full color printed glass on top of it.
Yes. But you can save on shipping by going and picking them up yourself.
Actually, I personally have done that like many times, driven up to ACS and just grab the glasses.
Which is like one of the beauties of you go drop off your beer in Baltimore and pick up your glassware to bring home.
There you go.
I was trying to like look and find the listing of like advanced cicerones in Maryland, but they're not making it easy to find that anymore. So I've given up.
They don't. The directory doesn't work the same way that it used to.
I thought there was a way to just do it by state, but
I thought so.
Oh wait, there it is. It finally loaded. Yep, just you and Michael Reinitz,
Yep.
both in Silver Spring. So Silver Spring has 100% of.
Silver Spring is overweight in beer nerds.
we have no master cicerones.
Oh God, someday.
Is that a goal?
Absolutely, lifetime for sure. I took the master cicerone exam, and it was I'll call it a positively humbling experience. In just terms of the breadth of knowledge that you have to have, and the know-how, and just familiarity with just so many different facets of the beer industry. And I look forward to doing that one day. I think I probably, especially if we keep up with the sort of the growth nature of Silver Branch to date, I'll probably have my hands full for a couple more years before I can carve out the time. I think the biggest difference is when you study for the Master Cicerone, I've since come to learn that even if you're doing this for a living at a very high level for a day-to-day basis, you still need to allocate 25 hours of study time per week for about 10 to 12 months leading up to the exam. And I won't do it when it comes at the expense of, my business or my personal life. So it probably will be a couple of years before I can get back on the study train.
There's 16 in the entire country.
If I take it a second time, I will not want to take it a third time. So if I'm going to take it a second time, I'm going to make damn sure I can do everything in my power to make sure I don't have to take it a third time.
Wow, there's only 19 worldwide.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's also crazy that one of them's in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. That is a tiny place.
Yeah.
How close were you to passing when you took it?
So when I took it, I did pretty well on some of the theoretical stuff. I did well on one of my in-person draft exams. I did not do so well on my other one, which was weird because I've learned a lot about draft beer. Like at one point I even had my own draft beer, line cleaning and maintenance and construction company that I was running on the side. So I think I just kind of had like performance fear and just sort of froze up in the moment. Yeah. But I think in the end I got a 73, and you need an 85 to pass the master. But where I tanked was on the tasting. And a big part of it is you have to be really incredible at identifying off flavors. So you have to blindly pick out. You can't just say like, ooh, this tastes off. You have to go, oh, this tastes off, and I'm perceiving like name that compound specifically.
Like diacetyl or Idiom, whatever that other off flavor is.
DMS.
Yeah, there it is.
So to put it into context, for the certified Cicerone, you have to study 5 and be able to identify them. It's like 5 or 6 maybe. When you go to the advanced level, you're working with a set of 14 to 16 that you need to be able to identify blindly. When you go to the master level, there are it's somewhere between like 24 or 30 off flavors that you have to be able to pick out in sub perception level.
That was going to be my next question. Was like how apparent is it too? Because like me personally, I'm not sensitive to diacetyl. A beer has to be really bad for me to detect it. So I'm convinced my palate, I would like besides all the other vast knowledge that you have to have that would exclude me from being a master cicerone, like just that alone would make it so there's no way that I would ever pass.
It depends. I mean, it's really, I look at it as like, the way that you get through the exam is deductive reasoning. Everybody has varying sensibilities or sensitivities to various things. So like I'm pretty sensitive.
Sensibilities are bad too.
I'm pretty sensitive to diacetyl, but like DMS, the one that people describe as like corn or cabbage or stuff like that, I don't perceive it. And I literally think it's because before I was 100% of legal drinking age, I probably spent a good amount of time drinking beers that were DMS bombs, like, and so I think I probably just naturally desensitized myself. So there's off flavors that are all like very hard for me to pick out. Like I just know that I'm not going to pick up on them.
So what other types of things do you have to know and do for that test?
Food is a big one.
Oh, like what pair, like the contrasting and enhancing flavors, and
you have to, like, I would describe it as like you have to have an understanding of how to fit beer with food, but you actually just have to start with an understanding about food.
Okay.
And like different types of cuisine and different common dishes, and like it helps. I was fortunate. I think what the Cicerone program does is it shows you all of your weak spots. So based on your professional background or your experience with beer, it will highlight to you what you need to study. So for me, having worked in some pretty nice restaurants and just been generally sort of interested in food without even realizing it, kind of like my whole life, I think I've always sort of had that rolling kind of knowledge or stuff in the background. So I didn't personally feel like I had to study up as much on the food side of it. But some people absolutely would have to spend a lot of time learning about food and then food with beer. But like for me, like the tasting was one thing that I would have to work on to get to that level. And then the other one was, like I was a home brewer, and then I helped out in a production brewery, or not a production brewery, a brew pub. But I haven't spent as much time really working in a production environment. And I think at that time, I think my perception has changed a lot, because after opening Silver Branch, I've gotten to learn a lot more. But at that time, I think that might have been a little bit about where my weak spot was.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best of luck, because it would be cool to say that I know a master.
Someday. we gotta see how like the next couple of years go. I'm not gonna sign myself up for that anytime soon. I now that I know what it takes, I also know that I'm not going to like set myself up for failure.
Yeah. And I think your thought process of focusing on Silver Branch over a piece of paper that really would do nothing for you in your ownership of Silver Branch probably is the better decision of where to focus your time and energy.
Yeah. I think, and I think going for something like the Master Cicerone, I think certainly, sure, there's some, commercial benefit to some extent, but when you have been fortunate, I feel so incredibly lucky to have been able to open Silver Branch, that the reason that I'm doing it, if I ever did it, would be for myself. It would be for me to just say, this is something I wanted to do and I did it. I don't know how much there's like to be gained from it.
Someone told me you're also super into coffee. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah.
Do you draw a lot of similarities between coffee and beer, or is it just another passion of yours?
Yeah. So actually, I think So I'm a big believer that learning about one type of beverage actually informs a lot about other beverages, because then you start understanding. I would say it like with coffee. I think the two that I lead with are probably beer and then coffee, and then immediately behind it, it's like cocktails and liquor, and then sort of the one that I know the least about is wine. But I love all four of them as just general beverage categories.
As
but
I
yeah,
got done telling the people from the Maryland Wine Association that I had in this week's episode, I don't care about wine. It's mainly just like I've never really had any interest in drinking it, so it wasn't like I probably just haven't found the types of wine that I like.
Here's the thing. I love wine, but for me personally, of the four drinks, it is the most occasional and the one that I do with like a very specific purpose. So like I don't, like I don't drink wine probably even weekly. It actually is, it depends on, like I love tasting wines. Like I'm fortunate that I've gotten to sit in on so many compelling tastings with people who actually know what they're talking about. I can just kind of observe. But yeah, it's definitely the thing that I drink the least of.
I don't think I could even say I drink wine annually. So is coffee something you could ever see Silver Branch getting into? Because there's a few breweries that have started doing their own line of coffees also. So
we if there were anything, I think we had actually created a coffee shop within Silver Branch pre-COVID, and we called it Black and Silver Coffee Company.
Oh, nice.
And we were,
I don't know how I missed that.
Well, it was very under the radar because we were testing it. And then I think we actually really started it in earnest at the end of 2019. So we didn't even have enough time to really breathe any life into it. And then COVID happened, and we were like, with no office tenants above us and none of that stuff, it didn't make sense for us to foray into the coffee business at that time.
Yeah.
It sort of scrap that, retool. But actually, this is what I started this is Coffee Chronicle. This is what I started the call with, and then we recently did vanilla latte. But
nice.
Yeah, I
think I have one of those, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I have the coffee itch for sure. Like I would love it if we could start with opening up for coffee service in the morning when it makes sense. I don't know when that is. I'd love to go back to that. And yeah, Christian and I have definitely talked about the possibility of a coffee roastery at some point in the future of the Silver Branch universe. But, we'll no promises, just pipe dreams for now.
What are your thoughts on flavored coffees? So like there's a few popular brands of coffee beans that have somewhat outlandish sometimes. Like I'm assuming they're just using extracts or something to soak them in or something. Different flavors. What are your thoughts on those?
Green Mountain Hazelnut is absolutely one of my favorites.
So specifically, I'm thinking like Bones, because Bones makes the outlandish.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you like that type of stuff, or do you think that is a bastardization of coffee?
Look, I want you to recognize something. I'm the guy that will go through great lengths to make myself a pour over at home that is like, aged to a certain date. Like literally I'm tracking how many days after roast the coffee is to determine how much to actually grind and put into this cup of pour over. But I'm the same guy that will go to Starbucks and get like a nitro cold brew with the dark chocolate almond foam.
Yeah.
So
Have you had
I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
Like there's
have you had the Irish cream one?
I have not.
The Irish cream cold brew cold foam is good.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think like the flavored beans, I'm not quite as excited, but I'm not opposed to adding crazy flavor to coffee. Like I think that's part of the nature of it. And
I look at it the same way that I look at beer. I don't care unless it's just pure gimmick. Even then, pure gimmick, I don't care either. I just like things that are fun. And if you throw in a cool looking stupid label, I'm gonna fall for it even more.
Yeah, I mean, wow, it's funny because I didn't even realize how intense the coffee itch was until this conversation. But
I love coffee. I've often said if gun to my head, pick one beverage that you give up on, coffee or beer, it would be easy for me to give up beer. Like one, like I'm addicted to coffee, but I'm not not addicted to beer. So that weighs into it also. But I start every day with multiple shots of espresso.
Oh yeah, and see that's the thing too. Though there's like in my mind there's like coffee, and then there's like espresso and everything that comes with it, and then there's like coffee shop culture, and all of those things are related, but they're like somewhat separate at the same time. And I think that's like I have the same thing that we create with Silver Branch, where we say experience Gemütlichkeit. I think coffee shops lend themselves to that similar ethos of sort of community and camaraderie, and just conversation, and
then people have their coffee shop just like people have their brewery, and there's a lot of cross section in those cultures.
Yeah,
I never realized how like complicated coffee can be. So I have a friend who, whenever he does something, he does it to the max.
Mm-hmm.
So he got into coffee. He bought, I think it was like a $3,000 espresso machine, and then learned everything about making coffee, like the different pressures, the temperatures, the grind, and started explaining it all to me. And I was like, I don't know. I have espresso machine that I pour a bunch of beans in the top, and I hit a button and it just does everything. Like I can appreciate the end product, but I've not put the effort into learning all the knowledge that you can have about coffee and the making of the proper way to make coffee.
Well, I think what's fascinating is like, beer you're making on one time scale. And that's like, we'll say by and large, that's weeks. Obviously, certain circumstances, it goes a lot longer. Like wine, whiskey, the same or greater in terms of, well, in the case of whiskey, absolutely greater in terms of time scale.
Yeah.
Coffee is very like a la minute, it's like if you're talking about the barista working with the finished product after like post roast, and it's like had enough time to mellow, like you're like making the drink, and like tiny fractional little adjustments have way outsized implications when you're pulling a shot of espresso. And I think for me, that stuff is fascinating. I
find it fascinating. When he started telling me all that, and like showed me all the settings you have to set on this espresso machine and all this stuff, I was like, that is way too much for early in the morning when I just want some shots of espresso.
Yeah. Well, I think there's like, it's similar to like you were getting at this with beer. I think with coffee and with beer, I think there's, you have different sort of modes, or, different kind of like, mindset depending on what circumstance you're in. Like if you're just trying to wake up, maybe it's just a good old cup of coffee that's doing exactly what it is supposed to do,
but I've had what's it, Vigilante Coffee, I think is who I've had on before. And like what they taught me about coffee roasting and everything was amazing. And like it's always been kind of a goal to learn more about it and like maybe even expand covering coffee a little bit more. But then I don't know, life gets in the way of doing that, so I don't.
Hey, if I would encourage you to go down that road, because honestly, like it's they're totally different, but they're like, if you love beer, you love, like, there's space for you to figure out a way to approach coffee from a similar level of interest.
Because they meld so well together. Like there's so many similarities and aspects that they tie into each other.
I have coffee beans and barley tattooed on my arm, so
nice.
That tells you how close together they are for me.
So the you being into coffee was 1000% correct.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time.
Like I think like if I ever decided to go the entrepreneurial route, like that's the type of business I think I would want to own, like a coffee roaster and cafe.
Yeah, it's a fun line of business. It's definitely, I think we would, if we had more space. I mean, I think we're realizing that we probably don't have space to roast anything anytime soon.
Yeah.
But you never know.
But it sure would make the place smell good.
Yeah, it would.
All right, Brett, I am starting to get text messages from my wife about when I'm going to be done, because I'm supposed to cook dinner tonight, and I'm guessing my kids are currently complaining about being hungry. So sorry to cut us short. I've enjoyed our conversation immensely. I love your beer, and I look forward to you putting my face on a can.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
So thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for watching and listening. Cheers.